He stood in the rain with his resignation letter in his pocket and a voice message from the person who had once sworn his love. No one else called. No one was waiting at home. And on that very night, he met a stranger who didn't ask, "What happened?" but simply sat down next to him and said, "I'll stay until you're ready." But this silence turned out to be not the end, but the beginning. Too real to leave without pain. I lost my job at 11:42 a.m. and my last excuse to text him by 3:06. By 8 p.m., I was soaked in rain so cold it felt personal, standing in front of a cafe I used to love, wondering how the hell I'd let everything slip through my fingers. The voicemail still played in my head. "Luca, I care about you, but I can't keep being your safe place." Then silence. Not even the courtesy of closure. Just blocked. The job loss? Less of a shock. You don't survive 3 months of cold glances and skip meetings without realizing your name's already crossed off somewhere. But I'd still shown up that morning like it mattered. I still packed my desk like someone who thought they'd come back. I hadn't eaten all day. Couldn't even feel my hands anymore. Just the letter in my back pocket, turning to pulp from the rain. My ex lived 2 blocks away. Not that it mattered. He'd moved on. He posted about it. I saw the pictures. New guy, new smile, same rainy backdrop we once shared. I don't know what hurt more, how fast he replaced me or how easy it looked. I sat on a bench across the street from Rome, the cafe that used to be ours. Not officially, but enough. Sunday mornings, 2 strong coffee, his laugh echoing off the glass. Now it was dark, chairs stacked, sign flipped, forgotten. And so was I, until I heard footsteps, slow, unrushed, measured like someone walking towards something they weren't afraid of. A man stopped beside me. He had an umbrella, but the rain still clung to his shoulders. He didn't ask what I was doing there or why my hands were shaking. He just said, "You look like someone who forgot how to ask for help." I didn't answer, didn't have the strength to lie or the trust to tell the truth. I expected him to leave. He didn't. Instead, he tilted the umbrella to cover me. Just like that, half dry, half broken stranger. "I'm Jacob," he said, like it mattered. "I'm fine," I muttered, hoarse. "Total lie." "Then let me sit here until you believe that," he replied. And he did. No questions, no stories, just quiet presence. The kind that doesn't ask for your pain, but makes space for it anyway. He held the silence without trying to fill it. I hated how good it felt. 15 minutes passed, maybe more. Rain blurred the city into a watercolor of brake lights and smudged reflections. My teeth chattered. He noticed but didn't make a scene. Just said, "Come inside, you're freezing." I started, already rejecting the offer before I could even hear it. "I'm not asking you to explain anything," Jacob cut in. "Just offering you a dry space, that's all." Something cracked. Not like glass, more like ice. Quiet but irreversible. I followed him. We entered through the back. The warmth hit hard. I stood there dripping onto the floor, thinking I should say something. Thank you, sorry, something. But the words stayed locked behind my teeth. He made tea, not out of obligation, just because it was cold, and maybe because silence doesn't have to be empty. "Sit," he said gently. I did. He placed the mug in front of me. Steam curled between us, and I realized I hadn't taken a deep breath in days, maybe weeks. "You live here?" I asked, finally breaking the quiet. "Above the cafe," he nodded. "Easier that way. Less room for excuses not to open on time." I almost smiled. It felt unfamiliar. He didn't pry, didn't ask if I was okay. Just handed me a folded towel and said, "Use this." For a few minutes, all I did was hold it, like it could stop me from unraveling. Then I said, "I think I got dumped today, or maybe last week. I honestly can't tell anymore." Jacob didn't blink, didn't try to fix it, just nodded, like the truth didn't scare him. "I'm sorry," he said, simple, honest. I laughed bitterly. He said I was too much, too emotional, that I didn't know how to be happy. Jacob leaned against the counter. "Happiness isn't something you perform for other people." The words hit harder than I expected. I stared into the tea, afraid if I spoke again, I'd fall apart. "You don't have to say anything," he added. Some nights are just for surviving. I should have left then. Should have said thank you and disappeared before I got too comfortable, before I started to trust. Instead, I asked, "Can I crash here for the night?" Jacob didn't flinch. "Of course, you can have the couch. Not luxury, but dry." That night, I lay awake long after he turned off the lights. I listened to the storm beating against the windows, the soft hum of a heater, and the even softer rhythm of his breathing from across the room. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't bracing for someone to walk away. I should have known peace like that came with a price. The next morning wasn't quiet. It was complicated. Because kindness, when you're not used to it, can be just as terrifying as being left behind. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the hum of movement. Jacob was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, focused on nothing but the moment. He didn't look up when I stirred on the couch. He just said, "Mugs are clean. Help yourself." He made it sound like I belonged there. I moved slowly, uncertain. My body sore, head cloudy, like sleep had tried to fix something, but gave up halfway. I reached for the mug he'd set out, pretending not to notice how my hand still trembled. I hadn't felt safe waking up in a while. It threw me off. "Thanks," I said. "You slept through the thunder," he replied like it was a compliment. I hadn't, but I didn't correct him. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It just held weight, like neither of us wanted to admit how fragile peace could be. I drank slowly, letting the warmth fill the spaces I'd been keeping empty. Then I made the mistake of asking, "Do you do this often? Take in strays?" Jacob didn't smile. "Only when they sit outside my cafe during a storm." "Guess I got lucky." He looked at me. "Or maybe you just needed a place to stop pretending." That undid me more than I wanted it to. I had nowhere to go, and we both knew it. But instead of pressing, he just slid a plate toward me, toast, plain, and went back to work like it was nothing. I ate because I hadn't the night before, not because I wanted to. Every bite felt like I was admitting something, that I was starting to feel again. I stayed the whole day, told myself it was just until the rain let up, then until the storm passed, then until I could think straight. By evening, I was still there, and Jacob hadn't asked me to leave. He let me wash a few dishes while he prepped for tomorrow. I expected him to correct me, tell me I was doing it wrong, but he didn't. He just said, "Gentle with the cups, they've survived more mornings than you think." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the first time in weeks someone trusted me not to break something. Later, we sat out back. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like apology. Jacob handed me a cup of tea and said nothing, so I filled the quiet. "I used to think I was easy to love," I said. "Turns out I was just easy to use." Jacob didn't flinch. "Who told you that?" "He didn't have to. He just left like I was a bad habit." Jacob looked ahead. "That says more about him than it ever will about you." I shook my head. "No. It says I let someone chip away at me long enough that I didn't recognize my reflection when he finally walked out." The silence afterward wasn't heavy. It was honest. For the first time, I said it out loud. The part I always swallowed. Not to be pitied, not to be forgiven. Just to be real. "You didn't deserve that," Jacob said quietly. I let the words sit, not because I fully believed them yet, but because I wanted to. That night, he offered the couch again. I didn't argue. But this time, sleep didn't come easy. Because safety, when you're not used to it, can feel like a setup, like the calm before another storm. My body kept waiting for the crash, the raised voice, the slammed door, the shift in tone that meant I'd said the wrong thing again. But it never came. What did come was a different fear, one I didn't expect. The fear of staying too long, of getting used to this, because I'd been told before that I was too much, too emotional, too intense, too hard to love for more than a season. And Jacob? He was steady, simple, like the kind of person who didn't offer what he couldn't sustain. So I started pulling back. I woke up early, took longer walks, came back after the cafe closed. I told myself I was giving him space, but really I was bracing for him to push me out first. He noticed. He didn't say it, but I saw it in the way he hesitated before speaking. How he stopped sitting across from me, How he left my coffee on the counter instead of placing it in my hands. Distance doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it just looks like caution. I stood in the back room one evening, staring at the umbrella he'd given me that first night, tucked behind the door, still faintly damp at the edges. It wasn't just a thing anymore. It was a symbol of the moment he saw me, stayed, and I hated how badly I missed that version of him, of us, even though he hadn't changed. I had, because the truth was, I was starting to depend on him, and that terrified me more than being alone ever did. I told myself I had to leave before it got harder, before I let him matter too much. But the thing about people like Jacob, they don't chase. They just leave the door unlocked and wait to see what you'll do next. I started finding reasons not to come back. At first it was the bookstore job. New schedule, new routines. Then it was errands I didn't need to run, walks that stretched longer than necessary. I answered Jacob's texts hours later, short replies. I convinced myself I was being considerate, giving him space. But the truth was simpler. I was pulling away before he could ask me to, because I knew what happened next. I'd lived it before. The warmth fades, the tone shifts, and one day someone you trusted starts looking at you like a burden they regret inviting in. I was just trying to beat him to it. He didn't ask where I'd been, not directly, but I felt the question in every silent pause. He still left coffee out for me on the days I did stop by, still nodded when I walked in. But something had changed, and it wasn't just me. We'd gone quiet in a way that didn't feel safe anymore, just careful. It came to a head on a rainy Thursday, the kind of rain that makes the city feel smaller, like every breath echoes louder than it should. I stayed late at the bookstore, told myself it was too wet to walk to the cafe, then walked there anyway. The lights were still on. The sign flipped to closed, but I could see Jacob behind the counter finishing up. I hesitated outside, my reflection blurred in the window, face caught between guilt and longing. Then I pushed the door open. He looked up, not surprised, just tired. "You've been quiet lately," he said. I shrugged. "Busy. You were busy last week, too." "I guess I'm consistent." He didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned back, arms crossed. "If you're looking for a way out, Luca, you don't have to ghost me to get there." I froze. "That's not what I'm doing." He tilted his head, watching me like he was trying to decide whether or not to believe that. "You sure? Because it feels a lot like you're halfway out the door, waiting for me to give you a reason." I swallowed hard. "I'm just trying not to repeat old patterns." Jacob's voice stayed calm, but his eyes tightened. "What patterns?" "Needing someone too much," I said. "Turning them into the reason I'm okay. That's what I did before, and it wrecked me." He nodded slowly, not dismissive, just absorbing. "I get that," he said, "but are you really protecting yourself? Or are you just afraid of letting something good stay for once?" That question gutted me, because the truth was, I didn't know. I looked down, fists clenched at my sides. I don't know who I am when I'm not surviving someone else. I need to figure that out before I can be with anyone. Even you. Jacob stepped back, like the words physically hit. He nodded once. "That's fair." The silence after wasn't angry. It was worse. It was final. I wanted him to fight. I wanted him to say, "I'll wait." But he didn't. He just said, "I'll miss you around here." And that broke me more than I expected. "I haven't even left yet," I whispered. "I know." I turned to go, but something made me stop at the door. I looked back. His hands were tucked in his pockets. Still, quiet. The same way he'd stood that first night. "I don't want this to end badly," I said. "It doesn't have to. I need to be alone right now. Not because I want to leave, but because I'm afraid if I stay like this, I'll ruin what this is." He nodded again. "Then go, but don't pretend like it doesn't matter." I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. He didn't chase me. He never would. And that's what hurt the most. Not because he didn't care, but because he respected me enough to let me walk away if that's what I chose. That night I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the umbrella he'd given me, still folded, still damp at the edges. I didn't open it. I didn't go back the next day. or the day after that. But I thought about him, constantly, not just about the quiet, or the tea, or the couch, but about how he never once made me feel like I had to earn comfort, about how he looked at me like I was worth staying for, even when I didn't believe it myself. That was more terrifying than any breakup I'd lived through, because he didn't just see me, he saw through me, and let me stay anyway. I missed that. I missed him. But I didn't know how to come back without undoing all the distance I'd created, and maybe part of me wasn't sure I deserved to. Until the rain came again, I didn't plan to return. I just walked. No destination, no umbrella. Just the memory of a man who never asked me to be anything but honest. And when I saw the cafe light glowing across the street, something in me cracked wide open. The rain came suddenly. Not violent, but certain. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. I didn't mean to walk by the cafe. I was heading nowhere in particular, just moving, like I had been for days. But when I saw the warm light still on inside, I stopped. My body moved before my mind decided. I crossed the street. I told myself I'd just look. Maybe see if he was okay. Maybe prove to myself I wasn't the only one who noticed the absence. But when I reached the door and saw him, sitting at the front table, reading alone, something in me cracked. Before I could think it through, I knocked. Jacob looked up. He didn't jump, didn't hesitate. He just stood and unlocked the door, as if he'd expected this exact moment. "You'll catch a cold," he said. "I forgot how umbrellas work," I replied, managing a weak smile. His eyes searched mine, not for answers, just confirmation that I was really there. I stepped inside. It smelled the same, coffee, sugar, and something steady I couldn't name. I sat down across from him without waiting to be asked. He pushed his cup slightly toward me, not offering, not expecting, just acknowledging space. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said finally. "I didn't think I would either." Jacob closed his book. "But you're here." "Yeah." Silence settled, not uncomfortable, just filled with things we weren't rushing to say. "I'm not here to undo anything," I said. I wanted to see you." He nodded. "You look steadier." "I feel quieter," I admitted. "Not fixed, just less afraid." He didn't press. He never did. And maybe that's why I found myself saying the next part. "I used to think you were saving me, that first night. But you weren't." "No." I shook my head. "You didn't fix anything. You just sat beside me when everything fell apart. And somehow, that was enough." Jacob leaned back. His expression softened. Something like relief mixed with quiet pride. "I wasn't trying to save you," he said. "I just didn't want you to think you were alone in it." I looked down at my hands. "You're the first person who didn't make me earn that." The rain continued outside, tapping softly against the window. The world felt distant, like it could wait a little longer. "I'm not asking to stay," I said. "I don't even know what this is anymore." "You don't have to name it," he said. "Sometimes just being here is enough." I reached out without thinking, my hand brushing his. He didn't flinch. He just let it happen. That quiet, steady presence I remembered. Still there. "I miss this," I said. His smile was small. So did I. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. We just sat there, holding on to the silence like it had finally become a friend instead of a threat. Later I stood to leave. He didn't stop me, but he pressed the old umbrella into my hand again. "You might still need it." I looked at it, then at him. "Maybe I won't." He laughed, soft, knowing. "Maybe not." Outside, the rain had softened to a whisper. I didn't open the umbrella. I let it hang at my side, fingers still warm from where our hands had touched. I walked home slower than usual, unsure what had changed, only that something had. Not everything needed to be named to be real. I didn't move back in. I didn't start sleeping on his couch again, but I kept showing up, and so did he. No labels, no demands. Just a quiet rhythm that felt like peace. Until one night, under a sky without rain, I finally reached for his hand. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I didn't move back in, didn't start crashing on the couch or staying until the cafe lights dimmed. But I kept coming, and Jacob never asked why. I'd show up near closing. He'd nod toward the counter like it was reserved for me. We didn't revisit the conversation about where I'd been or what I was thinking. We didn't need to. Whatever existed between us now wasn't built on urgency. It was steady. One night, he passed me a cup of tea and said, "You always show up right when the pot finishes." "Maybe the tea knows," I replied. He smirked. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I had to say more than that. We fell into rhythm. Not a relationship, not yet. Something softer. We'd share the quiet, then share thoughts. He'd talk about regular things, a shipment of beans that arrived late, a customer who tipped with a poem. I'd mention the bookstore, the old woman who kept asking for the same novel, forgetting she already owned it. There was no pressure to be impressive, just present. One Sunday, I stayed past closing. Jacob started prepping dinner upstairs and casually said, "I made too much." That became routine too. Sunday nights with 2 plates and nothing to prove. Still, there were moments I hesitated. Moments I wondered if I was building something real or clinging to safety disguised as comfort. But then he'd say something like, "You seem lighter lately," and I'd remember how far I'd come. One night I found him humming softly while counting the till. It caught me off guard. "You do that when you're happy," I said. Jacob paused. "Do what?" "You hum." He looked almost embarrassed. "Didn't realize." "Don't stop." He didn't. Weeks passed like that, unannounced, uncomplicated, quiet in a way that didn't scare me anymore. Then one evening, the rain returned. Soft, barely there, like the kind that lingers without soaking. We both stood near the door after closing, watching it fall. "You ever notice it rains when things shift?" I asked. He looked at me. "You think it means something?" "I used to think it meant endings. Now I'm not so sure." Jacob opened the door. "Walk with me?" I hesitated. "In this?" "It's only rain," he said. We walked without umbrellas, side by side. No words, just footsteps. The soft sound of drops hitting pavement. The kind of silence that felt earned. When we reached the edge of the block, I stopped. He looked over, curious. I said, "I used to think needing someone made me weak. And now? I think pretending I don't might be worse." Jacob didn't speak. He just held my gaze. Steady, calm. So I reached for his hand, not because I needed saving, not because I was falling apart, but because I finally trusted what we built. His fingers wrapped around mine. No hesitation. We stood like that under the streetlight, rain washing through the moment like a witness, not a threat. Back at the cafe, we didn't talk much. He poured us tea. I dried off. We sat in the quiet like we always did, except this time, our shoulders stayed close. Our hands didn't let go. Before I left that night, I looked at him. "I don't know what this is," I said. Jacob didn't flinch. "You don't have to know. Just keep showing up." That was the first time I didn't feel like I had to apologize for needing something. Weeks turned into more. We didn't rush anything. We didn't label what was growing between us. But I found myself staying longer, leaving later, laughing easier. Sometimes love doesn't knock. Sometimes it waits, patiently, until you're ready to open the door again. One evening, I caught him staring at me, not in a way that asked for anything, just quiet recognition. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. He never asked me to be more than I was. He never needed me to shrink or stretch to fit his idea of enough. He just stayed, long enough for me to come back to myself. And in the end, it wasn't the rain that saved me. It was the fact that someone stayed long enough to prove I could survive it.